Hello, hello, hello. It is January 10th. It is National Championship Day. It is Judgment Day. It is time to throw down the number one and number two teams in the country right now. I don't know, however you want to seed them, because I guess technically Georgia is not number two when it
They're,
pertains to the
they're number
seeding.
three. They're number three technically, yeah.
So number three, technically, but we know we've got two of the best college football teams about to throw down. Matt Scalici here with AL.com, joining me, Lauren Sisler here as well. And we want to thank our sponsors, Medical Properties Trust, as we dive right into our final pregame show of the college football season. I don't know. I got all the feels right now, Matt. This is kind of crazy. Like, we're here. Obviously, I'm back here in Birmingham, but Matt, give us a little lay of the land of where you're at right now. I know you're in Indianapolis getting ready for kickoff there in your hotel room. So give people a little bit of the scope of things that aren't there, obviously enjoying the festivities in Indianapolis.
I am in the media hotel here in Indianapolis, which actually is also the hotel that Alabama is staying in. It's the team hotel. We don't see them; they keep us locked away from us, so they're not distracted at all. But yeah, Indianapolis. Look, I've never been here before this trip, and I've been very surprised by it. It's a cool city that reminds me a lot of the other big southern cities that you're familiar with, Atlanta, Nashville. But the cool part about it is everything is right together. And I don't know if you can see, I'm in just briefly look out the window here, but that's
There we go.
downtown Indy. And if I kept moving the camera a little bit more, which I can't do because it's plugged into things, but the stadium is right there. I mean, I can look out the window here. I can see where the Pacers play, and then a little bit further this way is where they're going to be playing the national championship game tonight in Lucas Oil Stadium. It's a cool city because everything is right on top of each other, and you can kind of see everything from everywhere. It is very, very cold here, as I'm sure anybody, if you follow anybody who's here covering the game, you've already heard them mention it. We're not used to this kind of weather. We are Southern people, but thankfully we don't have to go outside very much. So it's and the game will be indoors too. So the weather won't be a factor unless you're tailgating today, I guess, before the game.
So obviously, a little bit of as you mentioned, a colder weather venue than maybe we're accustomed to. Of course, Atlanta always a popular spot, and the weather is always kind of hit or miss there. I was just there for the Peach Bowl last week, and a little bit chillier, a little bit rainier. However, they did open the roof in the dome there, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So kind of a different feel with the roof open, with it being technically the winter time. But with that being said, talking about the feels. Okay, so recapping, obviously Alabama getting here. They played the 4 seed Cincinnati, handled business. Was it the easiest matchup for them? Did they just roll through them? No, the final score 27-6. And I think when you look at that score, not necessarily indicative of how much work Alabama had to put in to, kind of put Cincinnati away. And then on the other side of it, you have Georgia, who obviously coming off a big win against Michigan. And they were, of course, the 3 seed, coming into this, and Michigan, the 2 seed. So a lot of people thought they were going to have their hands full, but the final score of that 34-11, that game, not even really close. And so now you come into this matchup, Matt. Alabama actually comes in as the now current 2.5-point underdog. So Georgia already went head to head with Alabama in the SEC championship. Then we got the college football playoff, the semifinals. And now here we are with Alabama actually being the underdog, the 2.5-point underdog. Kind of just, what is your overall sense and feel of Georgia right now? You've been on the ground there for a few days now. You've been a part of the press conferences. Granted, they are doing everything via Zoom because of COVID and kind of sticking with some protocols, keeping guys sort of contained. But, what's your overall feeling when you hear from Kirby and some of those players as they get ready for this rematch?
Well, yeah, it's been interesting hearing from both sides this week. I think there's nothing really surprising that we've heard from Alabama, to be honest, and that's kind of to be expected. They've been in this situation time and time again. This is nothing new for Nick Saban. It's nothing new for his coaching staff. These players, most of them were playing for a national championship a year ago too. So I don't want to say that they don't have nerves. I don't want to say that there's nothing at stake for them here, but they've been in this position They're not shocked by it. They're not really saying anything that you wouldn't expect them to say, I think. On the Georgia side, to me, and I don't cover Georgia all year long. I hear from them when they play Alabama and Auburn. I hear from them before the SEC championship game. To me, though, it's been interesting hearing the Georgia players and Kirby Smart talk this week about this game, because I guess part of what I expected after they lost the SEC championship game the way they did. I mean, it was a blowout. I think it's safe and fair to call that game a blowout. I really expected them to come into this game playing the underdog role and saying, we need to prove that's not who we are. We want to show everybody that we can play better than that, and we're the ones with something to prove here. And they're really not saying those things at all this week, Lauren. It's I would say they're trying to adopt kind of the sound and the posture of the defending champs, that they're the ones that are supposed to be here, and that Alabama's got to come in and prove that they're the worthy challenger. There's been a lot of talk of that we weren't at our best in the SEC championship game. Jordan Davis, who's the huge defensive tackle who a lot of people have pointed out really got worn down as that game went on. He said, I wasn't in my best condition going into that game. We heard a couple of players say, we know we can do better than that. Maybe we, I don't want to say they're making excuses, right? But they're kind of making excuses. They're kind of saying that wasn't a good indicator of how this game will go, and we think that we're the better team. And I'm parsing words here, but it does kind of feel to me like they don't want to play the underdog role in this game. They're fine to let Alabama continue to sort of believe that they're the plucky underdogs, just like they did going into that SEC championship game.
Well, and I think what's kind of interesting to me, obviously, you think about sort of where this game is at. I just go back to the 2018 season, right? And obviously Alabama and Georgia had Alabama on the line. I mean, Georgia had them on the hook. It was almost game over. Then obviously we know the story that goes from there. Tua Tagovailoa comes in and makes this miraculous, throw down the field to Devontae Smith, right?
That's right.
And that was all she wrote. And I remember just being on the field, grabbing post-game interviews, and just the reaction from Kirby Smart, just the anger and the feeling of, like, oh my gosh, like we couldn't close the deal.
Right.
Like the absolute frustration. And I'm just, it just coming into this game, if you're Kirby Smart and this is your team and you've got a chance to do this, like you can't get much better than Georgia is right now, meaning you've had all this success. There's not much more you can do but win a national championship, right? And unfortunately, an SEC championship and a national championship. But with that being said, like I just take myself in the mind of Kirby Smart and think, like, how are you feeling right now going into this? How are you gauging things? How is this going to be different than the SEC championship? And I think that's the one question people keep asking. How is this going to be different? And, I think that's kind of where we dive into some of the X's and O's, but would love to get y'all's take that are watching right now. How do you think this game may or may not be different? And, Matt, just sort of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do think some of what we're hearing this week is designed for Kirby Smart and his staff to not let his team lose confidence. What he doesn't want them to do, I think, is go into this game saying, we saw this story already. He doesn't want his team getting down early in this game, for example, and then folding their tents and just saying, well, here we go again. And I think it would be really easy for that to happen, not just because of this game, but because of, yes, as you mentioned, the 2017 national title game, the next year in the SEC championship game, when Alabama did it to them again. Georgia had Alabama on the ropes late in that game. Alabama brings in Jalen Hurts and finds a way to win that game. And then last year, Georgia coming into Bryant-Denny Stadium, You know, I think a lot of people believing that they were the better team going into that game, and Alabama ends up pulling away in the second half. I think over time there could eventually be this concern that Georgia players kind of have this boogeyman in their head wearing crimson. And I think that's what you're trying to avoid if you're Kirby Smart. You don't want Alabama to beat your team mentally before you ever play a snap in that stadium. And I think that's part of why he's trying to convince them you belong here. You're the dominant team. You're better than them. He wants them to continue to believe that even if things aren't going this way, going their way in this game. In terms of the matchup, though, Lauren, I think it's going to be fascinating. I don't think either team did anything particularly strange or remarkable in that SEC championship game. I think they played as themselves. They played to their own strengths, and I think the main difference was Georgia had not faced a quarterback on the level of Bryce Young the entire season up to that point. Really not even anybody close, I think, to Bryce Young. And I think for Alabama, you know, they had played a lot of really good defenses. They had played a lot of teams with great offenses. I think Alabama was the more tested team going into the SEC championship game, and I think it showed on the field. I think they were less rattled when things didn't go their way. And, you know, ultimately, I think Alabama's pass rush was able to affect Stetson Bennett, the Georgia quarterback, who was a good quarterback, but not an elite quarterback in most people's opinion. And meanwhile, on the other side of things, that great Georgia defense just wasn't able to make enough plays to stop Bryce Young. And I think it's interesting, Lauren, because these two coaches share a lot of history together. As a lot of people know, Kirby Smart was a longtime defensive coordinator for Nick Saban, came up under him, and they do a lot of things similarly. And if there is one thing, when you ask about beating an Alabama team, beating a Nick Saban team, what is the X factor, the thing you have to beat Nick Saban? Most people will tell you have to have an elite quarterback having a great day to do it. And that's ultimately what happened to Kirby Smart in that game. They faced an elite quarterback and he had a great day. Now, I think for Georgia to beat Alabama in this game, they have to find a different formula because they don't have an elite quarterback. So they're going to have to grind it out for 4 quarters to beat Alabama if they're going to win this championship.
Yeah, and I think that's a big word to add in there, having a good day, having your best day. And I think that there's so much that weighs into it because obviously there's the physical aspect, that the preparation, but also the mental aspect and just darn right having a good day. And I think to me, this becomes a game of momentum swings, a game of being able to capitalize on momentum. And so, yes, I 100% agree with you. I think the key thing to focus in on here is Alabama has an elite quarterback in Bryce Young, and Stetson Bennett has a tremendous story, but he just doesn't bring to the table what Bryce Young brings to the table. I think, yes, as Milk says here, Stetson will be comfortable today. I do think that we're going to hopefully see a better performance from Stetson Bennett, and things don't just kind of fall apart. But they were so good in pressuring him, and you would see good parts of him, and then just things will kind of fall apart. And so, I think that Georgia as a whole, and Stetson Bennett specifically, is going to have a good game. I think that things are going to have to go down better in the trenches because I think that this Georgia defense, without a question in my mind throughout the season, is the best in the country, has been one of the best. They've got guys like Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean and guys that you just have to have a major amount of respect for. But then on the offensive side of the story, and on the offensive side of the football, Stetson Bennett, again, does not necessarily command the team. And if Georgia kind of gets behind the chains, gets behind the sticks, really starts to struggle early, then I think that's where this Georgia team the wind comes out of the sails. Whereas an Alabama football team, like we saw in the Iron Bowl, things can literally kind of just be going the opposite direction for them. And you always sort of in your mind and your gut have this feeling going into the fourth quarter, oh, they'll figure it out, right? They'll just figure it out. Like,
well, that does give you a certain amount of confidence going into a game. If you have had to win the way Alabama's had to win games this year, I think it gives you a certain amount of confidence because you still know, even when things aren't going well for you, we're not out of this. We know we can come from behind and win when we need to. And I think that can give you a little bit of a boost and a little bit of confidence rather than panic in a situation like that when things aren't going your way. We've seen this Alabama team this year actually start off slow in a number of games and then found a way to get things going offensively. I want to bring up Chris Montenegro's comment right here on Facebook, who says this game will be won and lost with Alabama's offensive line, and I totally agree. I'll tell you this: if you're a casual football fan who tunes in on the national championship game and doesn't really watch the rest of the season, doesn't really get into the nitty gritty of how all this works, one of the best things you can do to sound like you're the smartest person at the watch party tonight, okay, is
As far as the smartest person to watch party. I like that.
When the ball is snapped, don't look at the quarterback, don't look at the ball, watch the line, watch the offensive line for Alabama and see how well they're holding up. See how, if they're getting pushed backwards and mowed down and knocked over by those Georgia defensive players, you know that maybe things are going differently today than they did last time. Maybe Georgia might end up having an edge tonight. But if you see them holding steady, holding their guys up, maybe even getting a little bit of a push forward, that's a sign that things are going Alabama's way and that they're going to have a good night. Now, obviously, you got to win those battles every single play, but that's I think going to be a great indicator of how this game will go. It's all about protecting Bryce Young and giving him enough time to find his receivers. Brian Robinson, who has been a huge, he basically was kind of put the team on his back in the Cotton Bowl, and had an absolutely massive performance carrying the ball. But tonight, his biggest role is going to be as a pass protector, and he's very good at it. Brian Robinson is a great pass protecting running back. He's an extra offensive lineman in there. And I think the fact that he's been able to get fully healthy since the end of the season, I think is going to be a huge asset for Alabama.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I do think it is going to be more difficult for Alabama to run the football in this one. So again, I
Right.
think that role for Brian Robinson certainly going to be much greater in that pass protection and, just kind of, keeping Bryce Young protected, because I think that is one area that Georgia wasn't able to sniff him out. They weren't able to get pressure on Bryce Young in the SEC championship. And I will say on the flip side of that, when you look at Georgia against Michigan, because we're going off their latest sampling, they did pressure McNamara like crazy. And they got a lot of pressure on the quarterback there. The one concern though I have for Georgia, and this is where Alabama, and we just talked about their ability to kind of come back. Alabama is great at making adjustments. On the flip side, Georgia had a great outing against Michigan, but they were shut out in the third quarter, only scored 7 points in the fourth quarter. And so I think Michigan was able to make some of those key adjustments that they needed to at least, slow Georgia down and kind of put them in their place, so to speak. And so I do think that it's going to be important, I think, for Georgia to be able to put the foot on the gas and stay on the gas for all 4 quarters if they do want to have a chance at winning. I don't think they can let up. But again, I think this one's going to go down in the trenches. Who protects their quarterback better? Who capitalizes on momentum swings? And who, obviously, eliminates mistakes, not only turnovers, but also penalties. I think that's going to be a big one because we know this is going to be a chippy game, Matt. We know there's going to be a lot of just boiling blood in this one. I mean, this is war. This is the national championship. This is laying it all on the line. So, I'm really excited to see how things sort of, pan out for this one. But it's going to be fun. So obviously Alabama, Georgia kicking off at 7:00 Central Time on ESPN. That's 7:00 Central. I know 8:00 your time, Matt. Any final words, anything that you want to leave us with as you get ready to head out there into the elements to get over to the stadium here in a few hours?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is I think Alabama and Georgia playing each other again for a national championship is not what a lot of people around the country wanted to see. But I think I will go back to a few years ago when this is what was happening with Alabama and Clemson, and I think that ends up sort of defining an era of college football for a lot of people. If you're old enough to remember back when heavyweight boxing was a big deal. Those series of big title fights are part of what made that sport popular in its time. And I think that could do the same thing for college football. I think people will remember these different iterations of Alabama versus Georgia for the national championship. These are very different teams than we saw a few years ago. They have their own personality and their own, quirks to them. And I really don't know. I mean, people have been texting me all morning saying, who do I think is going to win? I really don't know. I don't have a great feel for it. And I think it's going to come down to a small handful of plays that determine how this game goes tonight. And you got to watch the whole game to make sure that you see all of those big plays. It's going to be I think, as you brought up, limiting mistakes are a big deal. But I think really more than anything else, it is about who can find a way to make big plays, the big ones that we will remember and see on those highlight reels forever. We remember last time it was Tua Tagovailoa at the end of the game. I don't know if it'll be a walk-off game winner tonight, but there will be big plays that define this game for everybody, and that end up being the memorable images from tonight and from this whole season. So I think it's going to be a fun one. I think both teams are totally capable of those big plays. So I'm excited about it. It's a little weird that I'm watching it here in Indianapolis of all places to see Alabama and Georgia play, but why not,
I know, why not? It is definitely a unique situation because I feel like, to me, Atlanta kind of gets ingrained in your mind, just obviously with the SEC championship game. And then, of course, 2018 with the national championship being played there. So looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. Again, kickoff 7:00 Central Time, ESPN, Alabama versus Georgia for all the marbles. Looking forward to it. Thank you all for watching. And thank you to our sponsor for hanging with us all postseason. We appreciate Medical Properties Trust. You guys are all awesome. Enjoy the game. Peace out, everyone.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.